Now, Erie's premier podcast. News about music, health, and what's happening. It's Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814, sponsored by Erie Insurance.
Well, you know, I'm excited to share that this is podcast number 40, and I'm catching up to my age now. And if you believe that, that is totally wrong. But this week, it's voices of care and compassion. I have a special place in my heart for hospice and palliative care. I have been a hospice volunteer, a former director of development for the American Cancer Society, and joining me this morning are the executive director of Julia Hospice and Palliative Care. It's Julia Strolka and her husband, Dr. Christopher Strolka, president of the board and board certified in hospice and palliative medicine. Thank you both for coming on Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814. Julia, we'll start with you because I'd like to get some background on you. You know, tell me what brought you to the hospice and palliative care.
Well, it actually took a while, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I was a school principal.
Where at?
Yes. So I was at Seton Catholic down in Meadville, and then I was at St. Luke's. And halfway through the year when I was at St. Luke's, my husband said to me, he had done his training in hospice and palliative care at the Cleveland Clinic. He says, we really need to bring a hospice facility here to Erie, Pennsylvania. There's nothing here. And it took me a while to come around to that. I have to be honest. Mm-hmm. But he says, I have the hospice and palliative care background, and you've got the administration background, and together we're the only ones that can do this. And
hesitant?
Oh, I was very hesitant. I was very hesitant because, you know, it's something different, and it took me a while to get on board. I can't say I was like, okay, good idea. I'll quit my job and you know, we'll do this. You know, it's not something that people do right away. They go, you know, most people think about it for a while. But I did, you know, tell my supervisor that I was going to leave like in January, and we started planning it. And the more we put up a website and the more calls I got, the more I saw that there was such a need in this area because people would see our website and they thought that we already had it here, especially if they lived out of town. Mm-hmm. You know, if they were down in North Carolina, I need a place for my mom, my dad. You know, they're in Erie, but I'm down here. Can we put my mom and dad in your place? And the more stories I heard, and the more I realized how much we need this facility for Erie County. The stories, they're sad, and a lot of people have no options for care. They can't take care of someone in their home. They're working. They don't live in Erie. They're sick themselves. I mean, the reasons go on and on and on. And I would hear these stories, and I just, after a while, I was like, we've got to build this. You know, we have to build this facility. And so that's my story.
Dr. Chris, let's go back to you. Are you a Canisius grad?
Wow, that's not known by everybody in Erie. So,
well,
yeah,
the reason
I am.
why, yes, because I've had family that went to Canisius, and so is that where you did your undergraduate work?
Yes, I spent 4 years at Canisius College in Buffalo, New York, and then after that, I traveled off to Syracuse, and I went to medical school at Upstate Medical Center in Syracuse, New York, and that's actually where I met Julia.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Julia had just gotten her master's degree from Syracuse University, and we were introduced by some friends who thought that we would be compatible, and the rest, so to speak, is history.
How many children do you both have?
Two. Yes.
And what do they do for a living?
Well, my daughter, Alyssa, is a music therapist and a counselor, and my son is a cloud engineer.
Wow, a cloud engineer.
Right. So, yeah, it's really an interesting story because Alyssa, when she was growing up, is very, very musical. And Julia was a music teacher before she became a principal. So our kids have always had a very strong background in music, especially
Same here.
especially
Oh, yeah.
classical music. So, and Alyssa, actually, she was a wonderful singer. She's got a beautiful voice. It's a wonderful gift. And she actually, after she graduated from McDowell, after high school, she went to college on a voice degree to a college that specialized in voice called Westminster Choir College in New Jersey. It's right down the road from Princeton University, of all places. So it's a beautiful place to go to school. But while she was there working on her voice, she realized that she needed to have something to fall back on. And so that's how she got introduced and interested in music therapy. And she's actually a master's degreed licensed clinical social worker. So she actually has training in therapy, and she practices in Boston, actually in Newton, Massachusetts, just outside Boston.
Nice. So after you got your doctorate,
Yeah.
did you have it in specialized care, the hospice and palliative
No. I
care?
actually started my medical career in something 180 degrees from hospice and palliative medicine. So, my interest in medicine started when I was a teenager, and I was absolutely awestruck. I saw a open heart surgery when I was like 13 years old on television, and that just hooked me completely. So that's all I ever wanted to do. So after I got my medical degree, I came back to the University of Buffalo and did a general surgery residency and then a fellowship and residency in cardiothoracic surgery. And actually, I came to Erie and was hired by Dr. George D'Angelo, whom most people might remember. He started heart surgery at Hammett. And so that's what I did for a large part of my career.
And then how did it all change?
Yeah, how did it all change?
Like, how do we go from open heart to hospice?
It's quite a journey. So, yeah, fortunately you always meet people in your life that get you to think in different ways. So there was a general surgeon at Hammett, Dr. Jeffrey Dunn. And Jeff is an extraordinary guy, as a lot of people know. And he was interested in, quote, palliative surgery. So he was working with the American College of Surgeons, developing a curriculum to train young surgeons in, quote, palliative surgery. So he would give me things to read, and that kind of got me interested. And as I practiced here in Erie, there were always some cases that stood out to me because they were particularly challenging for the families and the patients trying to navigate through the complexities of their illnesses. And especially when they would reach the end parts of their life, the end stages of their lives. And there just didn't seem to be a lot of resources. And I remember talking with Jeff Dunn about it, and he encouraged me. And when there was an opportunity for me to kind of retire from surgery, even though I was relatively young, and go in a different direction, I had an opportunity to go to the Cleveland Clinic and do a fellowship in hospice and palliative medicine. And while I was there, part of the fellowship involved working at an inpatient or a residential hospice facility. So I worked at a place called the Simpson House. It was in Euclid, Ohio, right on the lake, on Lake Erie. It was a beautiful place. And they had patients living there, and they had patients who were there getting a higher level of care. So they were a full, kind of full-service facility. And it was just the most extraordinary place. They would bring in music therapists, art therapists. They had a multi-denominational church or a chapel where families could be together and bring in spiritual advisors. And it was just such a comprehensive, whole person way of looking at illness and looking at the humanity of our life's journey. it was so profound to me. I was thinking to myself, I don't believe we have a facility like this here in Erie. And sure enough, we didn't. And I couldn't quite understand why. And now, obviously, Cleveland is several times larger than Erie. And then when I started doing some research, they have facilities like this in Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Cleveland. And they have some smaller facilities that I basically refer to as hospice houses. They're mainly residential, for people who don't have maybe a caregiver, 24/7 caregiver at home, and they really just need to be in a facility or a place that's home-like, where they have access to caregivers. And so there are smaller facilities in Warren and in Meadville, and there's a facility in Jamestown, New York as well, that give people who are at the end of their lives the opportunity to get specialized end-of-life care in a facility that's much like being at home and have access to professional caregivers. And they would otherwise have to deny using this care that they're entitled to because they don't have a 24/7 caregiver. So when I finished the fellowship in Cleveland and came back to Erie, that was really where the seed was planted to do this.
Speaking of the seed being planted, now you come back from Cleveland. What are the next steps? You got to find a facility. I mean,
Yeah.
How did this build up to where you are now? And what year did that happen?
So in 2019, we became incorporated as a business.
Okay.
We had to form a board, which we did that September, and then COVID happened. So that was very interesting. And in the meantime, we applied for our 501c3, and it came the Monday. I remember it was the Monday after Easter in 2020.
So this really is relatively new.
It is relatively new. So when we decided to form a nonprofit corporation, there was a bunch of administrative hoops we had to jump through. So there was some time before we actually got our tax-exempt status and we could start fundraising, right? So right from the start, I kind of drafted and put together a strategic business plan of where this corporation was going to go. And the first decision we had to kind of make as an organization was whether to try to find a pre-existing building somewhere and try to renovate it or retrofit it into a facility that would be appropriate for this kind of specialized care. We were very passionate and adamant that we did not want this facility to feel and look like a nursing home. We have many nursing homes in the area, and I think that there's a belief in the community that, well, if you don't have a caregiver and you can't stay in your house, you can always go to a nursing home. And hospice or end-of-life care actually is part or is paid for the most part by the Medicare hospice benefit through Medicare. And Medicare expanded hospice, which started out as primarily being delivered in people's homes. They expanded it to nursing homes in the late 1980s. So it's the ability to receive hospice care in a nursing facility has been around for quite some time.
Right. So then it all begins.
It all begins.
What is the mission? What's the mission?
Yeah. The mission.
Because you always have to write that mission.
Right.
Yes.
Well, in general, it's really to try to bring services that exist outside of Erie to Erie. Right. So, I mean, I tried to do that to some extent when I was a heart surgeon. I started doing types of surgeries that were brand new and were done outside of Erie, and I was very passionate of wanting to bring those services so that people didn't have to travel hundreds of miles to get state-of-the-art care. And I kind of brought that same mindset to the hospice arena. So first and foremost, we needed a specialized facility where patients who didn't have a caregiver where they were living and were eligible for specialized end-of-life care or hospice could live. That would be the next best thing to their home, and have access to caregivers 24/7 and get that specialized care that they need at the end of their lives. So that was first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
The palliative medicine component is something that is also somewhat new. So palliative medicine is the medical specialty that delivers and supports palliative care. So palliative care is really a mindset. It's a philosophy of care.
That's what I was going to ask you, Doc. What is the difference between hospice and palliative care?
Hospice is a type of palliative care.
Right.
But the umbrella of palliative care is so much more. So in the United States, patients are eligible for the specialized end-of-life care or hospice if 2 physicians certify that they're not likely to live beyond 6 months. So that limits who could be eligible for that kind of care. So you have to have that type of a prognosis. And that's why hospice scares a lot of people, because they know what it means. And
Yes.
it carries a significant amount of stigma. With it, right? Palliative medicine, or palliative care on the other hand, is kind of is team-based care. So it's very similar in hospice in the way that it's delivered. And its goal is to improve the quality of someone's life, whatever that means to them. But it doesn't carry the stigma because it doesn't have this prognosis requirement attached to it. So anybody with a serious illness that is interested in trying to improve the quality of their life, whatever that means to them, whether it's understanding their illnesses more, whether it's getting support to better manage pain or other types of distressing symptoms, whether it's help with navigating the healthcare system, which is very complex and often fragmented. And the last piece that palliative medicine covers is something we call advanced care planning. It's allowing patients to participate in making decisions today that may affect them tomorrow or may affect them years from now when they reach the end of their lives. So everyone, it's protected by federal law and by state law, has the right to decide on what type of care they would want for themselves when they can't make decisions for themselves or when they reach the end of their lives. And we help people and families navigate through that.
Right. And at what point should a patient consider either palliative care or hospice care?
So, like I said, if you are living with any serious illness, so by serious illness, I mean a potentially life-threatening illness. So take, for example, diabetes. So diabetes in most circumstances is not a curable disease. It's something that is managed and people live with for many, many years. Other types of illnesses that would be more likely to be incurable sometimes are heart disease and lung disease and liver disease and kidney disease. Sometimes it's neurodegenerative diseases like ALS and MS. And it's all of the neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. These are not likely curable diseases, but they can be managed, and patients and families can live with them for quite some time. So that is, in a broad view, would represent serious illnesses. So people that are living with these illnesses out in the community, a specialty like palliative medicine would help them understand those illnesses better so they could make better decisions regarding what they want as the illnesses progress. Help them manage any distressing symptoms that they're dealing with, and help them navigate the myriad of healthcare options and choices that they have as these illnesses progress. And again, and the advanced care planning, helping them legally make decisions and putting a plan together when they have the ability now and they're not in a crisis that will help them and their
Families. Right.
handle a crisis.
What type of pain management or symptoms relief options are there available? I mean,
Well, it's like I said, palliative medicine is a medical specialty just like any other medical specialty.
Right.
So we primarily use pharmaceuticals to help manage symptoms, but we can work together with other colleagues, chronic interventional pain specialists, and other types of what we call complementary care. So that's where something like what we were talking about with our daughter, who's a music therapist, using other complementary therapies like music and art
love that.
and diet and exercise as complementary therapies to help people manage their serious illnesses.
I have joining me this morning Executive Director of Julia Hospice and Palliative Care. It's Julia Strelka and her husband, Dr. Christopher Strelka, President of the Board and Board Certified in Hospice and Palliative Care. Dr. Chris, how do you approach treatment decisions? Like, what is the approach, especially regarding continuing or stopping certain medications?
Right. So again, it's in kind of a simple calculus. It's risks versus benefits, right? So as long as the benefit of a treatment outweighs the potential risks, then it makes sense to continue it.
Right.
And vice versa. Sometimes when the risks associated with medications or any type of treatment, when those risks become substantial, that they actually outweigh the potential benefits, then I think it's time to have a discussion with the clinicians and try to determine whether it makes sense to continue those treatments.
Right. So you talk about the family and the emotional and the psychological support that goes along with that. What does Julia do for that? Or do we have any psychotherapy or anything like that?
Yes,
Julia?
and that's
Yeah.
Well, not at this time. We don't have any, but at the Julia House, we will have social workers, licensed social workers that can help, work with the patients, music therapists, all the complementary care that my husband spoke of.
And that building is close to being built now. Are we still reaching for the stars on this one?
Well, we've cut the building down. Originally, I know.
Because I remember you,
Yeah.
and I recall you speaking.
Yeah.
I don't recall. Maybe it was at the Niagara Network, or one of the organizations that a lot of us nonprofits go to, and you had talked about this new building
Yes.
that was.
Yes,
That was
it originally was 18 rooms. We had to cut it in half just because of the cost. The pandemic pushed the cost up. We've had a huge increase in building costs over the last 4 years. We had to redo the entire building to cut out everything that we didn't need. Only the essentials are now in the building.
Where will that building be located?
It'll be located on West Road in McCain Township. It's on the south side of the road. It's between the 79 and the borough of McCain. So we've got 13 acres. The back of the lot's wooded.
Nice.
Yes, and we're going to be planting. There's trees back there, and there's deer running around, and it's nice and peaceful. And so it's a perfect place to put a building, and it's right in the center of Erie County. It's easy access on top of it, so it's perfect.
I'm just glad that the two of you, as a married couple, have come together and done so much work in really a very short time.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Yeah, we really have. But it's not just Julia and myself. We have an extraordinary group of people who help us. I mean, Julia has a volunteer group that she helps with. It's called Julia Cares, and these
And
are just
they are amazing.
I bet. Are you looking for volunteers or
We
help
do.
at this time?
Anyone who would like to help with us with what we're doing, we would love to have them. So we have a board of directors.
right. We have an extraordinary board of directors that really helps keep us on our toes.
Yes.
That's for sure.
That's what a board is
Yes.
is there for.
And then we
truly.
have a board of directors who work independently. They do their own thing, and we talk as we need to. And then we have a finance committee, a great group of people who overlook again what we're doing. And
Did
make
you-
sure that we
It takes a
invest.
village.
I
It's
I
not-
was going to
Yes.
say, just starting a nonprofit organization
Yes.
is a true,
daunting-
true undertaking.
It's daunting. Yeah,
then-
right.
Yeah, and then we have our Julia Cares volunteers, a great group of people. I would join just because they're a great group of people, and it's a great place to meet people. Wonderful group.
What do the volunteers do for you?
Everything. They're wonderful. They educate. They go give talks. They have tables at different events. We were at the Greek Fest this year. We're going to be at the Irish Fest. We were at Waterford Heritage Days this year. They have a information table. They give out information and they talk about what we're doing. A lot of what we do is awareness. A lot of people don't know we don't have a hospice facility.
Right.
And, and so when they find out, they're like kind of blown away. So it's awareness, education, and fundraising. So we are having a cash bash on October 5th.
Where's that at?
That's going to be at St. Francis Ushers Club down in McCain. And we're selling 500 tickets. Last year we sold out. So if you want to go, you got to get your ticket now.
Father, who's out at St. Francis and McCain?
Father Jason Fias.
Father Jason is the absolute best.
He's awesome.
And I recall last year
yes.
you had a sold out.
Yes.
gig,
But
'cause
this is at the Ushers Club. So it's not associated with St. Francis Xavier Church.
Oh, okay.
This
So
is
it's at the Ushers Club.
St. Francis Ushers Club.
Okay.
St. Francis Ushers
Gotcha.
Club. So the tickets are $25. You get a chance. First prize is $1,000. Second is $500, and then we're giving two $100 prizes out. And as I said last year, we sold out. So
And that's October 5th, right?
October 5th, yes.
What time is this gala event?
Yeah, that's
5 to 9.
5 to 9. Perfect.
So if you are interested, you can call me at 814-440-3275.
I speak from the heart because my mother is in hospice right now, and she's 91, and she's still at home, and it's wonderful because she has plenty of daughters that
help.
that help.
That's great.
But when I think of the person that has no one
Yeah.
and is struggling
Yeah.
with a life-threatening
Yeah.
disease,
Yes.
that where do they go? And now I know where they can go.
Yes.
Right.
Where is your other facility? Are you
We have a palliative medicine office on Richmond Ave, 4906 Richmond
okay?
Street.
Okay,
Right.
but I think of that. And it takes me to like Mother Teresa, who went out on the streets and took people that were at the end of their life and brought them in and gave them dignity and pride and loved them to the end. And this is what your organization reminds me of.
Wow, that's I mean, I think it's appropriate because obviously Julie and I have been in this community now for 27 years, and religion and the churches are very impactful in this area. We all know that, and they hold a special place in much of the community's heart. So I do think that part of the mission of what we're doing aligns itself very closely with our responsibility as chosen creatures of created
Yes.
creatures of God, to protect each other's humanity. So that is something that's very important to me. So. I think back to what Julia was saying, the facility is a place that will bring together all of these different clinicians, because again, the difference between palliative care or palliative medicine and many other types of specialized care is that the palliative specialist is interested in the whole person, right? So not just a disease or trying to help manage a disease, but how to improve well-being.
I love that talk. It really is. It's the whole person.
It's the whole person. So that's why you need to have a fairly broad team of clinicians. So chaplains, therapists, nurses, a doctor that kind of oversees everything.
Right.
We even want to bring like palliative trained nurse practitioners, and try to bring all these clinicians together to form a cohesive team that can look at a patient with a serious illness and come up with a kind of a game plan that really tries to comprehensively address them as a whole person.
Right.
And then when they reach that point in their life's journey that they're at the end of their lives, then we will be there to help support them in the transition to hospice.
How do you handle discussions about end-of-life wishes and advance directives? How do you do that?
Yes, I mean, and that's why I think a lot of other medical specialists, even the primary care physicians, that is a daunting challenge too. It's difficult. Those conversations are difficult, and it takes a little bit of training and it takes a little bit of experience to be able to address those issues in a sensitive and empathic way. Believe me, there are lots of doctors in Erie that are excellent doctors at being able to have those conversations. So not everybody needs a palliative medicine specialist to do
right.
it. So I really believe in something called primary palliative care. It's those discussions between a caring doctor or clinician and a patient, just trying to understand what their goals for care are, right? So I used to say this all the time. I'm not sure how you can put a plan of care in place when you don't understand what the patient's goals are for the care, right? So a lot of times, we assume that when people reach out to physicians or they come to the hospital that they're basically kind of saying, I want everything done. And that's not always the case. And
no, it's not.
Yeah. So you have to be ready to kind of look at those patients and kind of put yourself in their shoes and see where they're at. And that oftentimes gives you some insight to help you kind of address those difficult issues.
Right.
And obviously trying to get the family members all on the same page, that's sometimes quite challenging. But I think I always try to focus on the patient if the patient can be the kind of the driver of the bus. And once we understand what their goals are and what their wishes are, then it's really just trying to explain to everybody as children and as spouses and as family members that it's our responsibility to honor the wishes of our loved ones.
Amen.
And once you know what those wishes are, and that makes things a lot less complicated. We don't have to argue about what I think is right or what I think you should do. It's really about what you think is important for yourself.
Right.
Some people want to know how much time they have left, and they want the doctor to be honest with them about their diagnosis. And it's mostly because they want to live life to the fullest. And then they take that time and they cherish it, and they cherish that time with their loved ones. And so
I can remember when, and this was a year and a half ago with my mother when we got the second. Yeah, I mean, she had cancer in the past, and it is back. And, she's 91 years old. And, we talked to the doctors, and, my sister and I were there with her, and she said, well, I don't have any fight in me. I just want to be able to live the rest of my days as comfortable as possible. And at that point, she was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
So first thing was, I looked at the doctor and I said, well, we just need to get her pain under control.
Yep.
Because as long as her pain is under control, then, she'll be more comfortable, more stable. And you're right. I mean, when somebody says hospice, like when I talked to my mother about hospice, it was a very negative feeling for her. But now that she's been under hospice care, and of course her daughter's taking care of her, her ideal of hospice has totally changed. But
That's pretty typical.
But up to that point, and we all came together, and my mother didn't want to know, what the how long it was going to be or whatever, and so it was interesting to go through all that and come to the conclusion to do what she wanted to do, and how she's living out her days, and she still gets out, she still does things, and she keeps saying, I don't know what's going on, Nellie. Why is the Lord keeping me here, right?
Hopefully she'll have a chance to ask him herself, right?
Yes, and I always say to her, that's because you're praying for everybody else, Mom.
Right, there you go.
That's
So
her
that
job.
is
Yes, that's her job.
And I always say that. I said, he'll come when he would like. And in the meantime, we're going to keep doing what we do as a family. And we're going to still do the things that we love to do.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
Yes. And then, that's why I said, you're praying for everybody. Yeah. So he's not ready for you yet.
Yeah, I think some of your listeners would even find it quite interesting that they've actually done empiric studies and have shown that when patients reach a point where they accept end-of-life care, hospice care, that once you remove the stress of constantly feeling like you've got to pursue treatment, aggressive treatment, once you take that stress away, patients actually can live longer.
Yes.
So their prognosis actually increases. And that's it's because it's counterintuitive, and we've all been kind of, and believe me, like I said, I understand this because I trained as a surgeon for many, many years. And so death was the enemy, and I devoted my life to.
You are right. You have gone from one extreme to the other, my man.
Right. And so that's a unique, it's funny because the Cleveland Clinic, when I came to them and told them that I was interested in being a fellow in hospice and palliative medicine, they didn't believe me at first. They thought I was joking. And I had to actually come to the Cleveland Clinic for more interviews to explain to them why I wanted to do this than any of the other fellows, because they just thought it was so strange that a heart surgeon would make this kind of a transition in their medical career. So I guess it was unique. Funny, there was maybe only a handful of surgeons, and thankfully Dr. Dunn was another one who came to that understanding, because he was the one that challenged me and got me to think about that kind of a change in career. Right.
So how do you handle emergencies, like sudden changes in a patient's care?
Well, that's another role for that inpatient hospice facility. So when someone has a crisis or like a pain crisis, or they become delirious and they're hallucinating and they're just crying out and they just seem inconsolable, and the family is just being stressed, with really not knowing where to turn, that's where having this inpatient hospice facility where you can temporarily move the patient from their home, which is most likely where they want to be, to a facility that can offer them intravenous medications to get pain under control quickly, maybe some non-invasive ventilatory supports if breathing is a problem and it's causing a great deal of stress. And again, finding those or treating those sometimes infections that are causing the delirium, and trying to understand, what may have caused that acute change, but getting it under control as quickly as possible, and then returning the patient back to the home and back to where they're comfortable. That's really the purpose and part of the goal of having that inpatient facility. That's again what makes it different in most cases than a traditional nursing home.
I recall when I was a volunteer for hospice out in Northeast, we took training. Is there training available, Julia?
That's
Yeah,
actually,
that's Julia's-
actually a Chris. That's a Chris question.
Yes, there is. So
Okay.
of course, so that's part of the business plan and our strategy as this facility is being built. We're going to be trying to recruit the staff, and part of hiring the staff is going to include at least 2 weeks of additional training, because I think it's important that the nurses and the therapists and even the nurse practitioner are up to date on all of the newest information regarding hospice care or palliative care. So yes, that's going to be part of our process and kind of onboarding clinicians that are going to be part of our clinical team.
Because I did some onboarding too, and basically I just was one of those hospice volunteers that just showed up, said hello, and of course I am musical too, so I would bring my guitar and sing and read and just spend some time with them so family members could get away for
Absolutely.
for
That
a couple
respite is
hours.
important.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And what did that experience mean to the patient in your eyes?
Everything, because it wasn't, and there were several people that I worked with, and I think most difficult for me is getting to meet a new patient and then they're gone a week later, and then all of a sudden things change. But I really had developed some really great relationships with people, because death shouldn't be scary.
No.
And that's how I always felt, because I feel that there is peace that comes with death.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that really stirred me into being a volunteer.
Right.
And then just the fact to take their mind off all the other things that were going on. And, because sometimes it's okay to have somebody around that's not a family member, that's, got their eye on things and,
Sure.
and, they can talk to you as a friend
Yeah.
and, and say some things that they probably wouldn't say to their own family members.
And I think you brought up something that was really important there, right? So I think that sometimes certain cultures develop in a community. And I think one of the cultures that I've noticed that have, in transitioning to this type of specialized care is that oftentimes patients get to it kind of late, too late. So as we've said, hospice eligibility is for anyone that two physicians don't think is going to live beyond 6 months if their illness runs its natural course. Not, and I think a lot of times in our community, people get to the hospice point when they're either actively dying and they only have hours to live or a few days to live. And when you look at the length of stay for people in Erie County who are in hospice, 50% of them are in hospice less than 2 weeks. So that is, we needed to do a little bit better job, and we're trying to educate not just the public, but also the medical community, that hospice is not something to be feared, and it's not adversarial. There is a proper place for it, working together with all of the other medical specialties. And when it's appropriate, it can be a wonderful thing, as you know.
Yes. So your organization is funded primarily through fundraising, right, Julia?
Yes. Yes.
So I think we need to do a shout out to the city on, during Erie Gives.
Oh, yes.
Like you went gangbusters in
Yes,
Erie Gives,
we had-
because people know that we need this facility,
Yeah, I
we
think-
need
Yes.
this building, we need this
Yes.
for our community, right?
We do need it. We did great on Erie Gives, and I'd like to thank everyone who gave to Julia Hospice on Palliative Care on Erie Gives Day, and who gives. We have a lot of people who give to us on a regular basis.
Yeah,
Sometimes
sustained donors, yeah.
Yeah, every month. Sometimes we have people who give once a month, and we have people who give once a year. But the community's been so generous, and we are so grateful. this building is run by the community for the community.
Right.
And
So the biggest success story that I'm visioning right now
okay.
is having this facility built
Mm-hmm.
so we can continue our work here in the
Yes.
community,
Yes.
right?
It's really about the care in the building. It's not just the brick and mortars. It's what's going to happen in that.
Inside the building. I
Yeah.
cannot wait to walk in the new building
Yeah.
and feel that presence
Yeah.
of, care and concern and all those things that make those last days for people much, much better.
Yeah.
Right.
Our motto is care, comfort, and compassion.
Love it. Many people in our community suffer from serious illnesses and they need more intense care
Yes.
or better care options in general.
Yeah.
I read your website. I loved your website, by the way.
Thank you.
And, I think another important factor is some people do not have family members to care for them. And I think about that.
But a lot of people, even if they do have family, it's, people work. They can't leave their jobs and take care of a loved one. You need care 24/7, and it's not always possible. I mean, my own 2 kids, neither of them live in town, so there's a lot of reasons that people can't take care of a loved one.
And I think people sometimes underestimate how physically and emotionally demanding caring for somebody at the end of their life is, right? And I know we
yes.
all want to do it. We all want, Mom never said, she doesn't want to be in a nursing home. And I know I've heard it, and I know there's all the doctors out there have heard those comments made, but it sometimes is very difficult and it gets overwhelming.
Yep. So you're planning on building the Julia House.
Yes.
And that will be the first local residential and inpatient facility for end-of-life care and palliative care.
Yes.
And we just need the community support so
Yes.
we can get to the next level.
We need to get to the next level. So
You can donate online too, right,
yes,
Julia?
you can donate online. You can just send a check if you like. You can call me up. You can do anything that you like, basically.
But we do have a donation portal on our website, juliahpc.com as well.
Yeah.
And you can subscribe or sign up for our newsletter. I email a digital newsletter as often as I can. Sometimes it's once a month. Sometimes it's multiple times during the year. It gives updates on where we are and how people can help.
Doc, I'm just glad you went to Cleveland, did this fellowship. Like, I that's exciting stuff. And then come back and go from life-saving to giving that extra care at the end of life.
Yeah.
How awesome is that? That's awesome.
I'm a blessed person, and Julie and I are both blessed, and we just want to try to give back to the community.
Right. It's Executive Director of Julia Hospice and Palliative Care. It's Julia Strelka and her husband, Dr. Chris Strelka, President of the board and the board certified in hospice and palliative care and medicine. I want to thank you both for coming on the show with Nat the Hat and the 814. It is sponsored
we are
by
so
Erie
glad
Insurance.
to be here.
And it just
Yes, thank
it
you.
warms my heart to know that you're just doing great things for so many. So it is, I read this quote and it reminded me of what the two of you stand for. And the quote was, "It's a privilege to be of service to others at a sacred time in their lives." Thanks so much, both of you, for being on the show. Don't forget to donate, and I look forward to getting into the brand new building.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's
been our pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah.
been
Everybody
great.
have
Thank
a
you.
great week in the 814.
You've been tuned in to Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814, sponsored by Erie Insurance on 88.5 and 102.7 LECOM Radio.